Go ahead and start the recording. So, all right, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. Just a couple of little notes right at the beginning. Again, as stated, Mr. Sullivan is here with us with Marathon. He's the Government and Public Affairs Manager for Marathon Petroleum here in Alaska. So we're going to get a little refining 101, a little slightly deeper dive in that, but a little refining review today. For questions, as always, if anybody has any questions, you can always take yourself off mute. I will be actively muting folks as they come in, just so we don't get too much feedback. But again, if you have any questions as we move through the presentation, please feel free. Otherwise, I will be monitoring the chat box. One more thing, I guess I'll start with our COVID minute. Just a little note, in response to the governor's call, we are kind of de-staffing here at FEDC. We're going to be working mostly from home. So please do call or email in advance, particularly if you're going to want to be popping by the office. Again, though, we're going to kind of hold it to minimum staffing and mostly work from home for a little while. Also regarding COVID, again, we had our presentation, our blip last week regarding CARES funding, FNSB CARES funding. During our staff meeting yesterday, Ms. Michelle, Mrs. Deckard noted that they are still taking applications through the end of the month, November 30th. Our understanding is that they're actually getting pretty close to being fully subscribed. But again, the Assembly has bumped the limits. You can get more funding. And now that essentially the federal funding is no longer available, the state has stopped taking applications, the city is done. That leaves FNSB and City of North Pole as the last shows in town. So if you hear of any businesses that still require assistance, please do encourage them to get in their applications as soon as possible. All right, with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Mr. Sullivan. Good morning.
Good morning, Jomo. Hey, thanks. Thank you for that, and thanks, and good morning, everybody. Casey Sullivan, again, Government Public Affairs Manager for Marathon Petroleum, formerly known as Tesoro, as many of you will know. I see lots of old friends on the line today, so it seems like Senator Wilkin, good to see you on the line, and Jim Sackett and Gene, seems like Dean Terrio's on there, and Rick Soley. So good morning, everybody. Representative LeBon, see you on there as well. Congratulations on the good outcome for your race, and Representative Hopkins, to you as well. So I know you guys got big challenges ahead in the session, and glad to have you both back as now senior members of the legislature to tackle those. So anyway, glad to have you all here. For those of you that have seen this presentation before, I think Rick Soley and Uriah, I apologize in advance. The jokes are the same. So, as is the quiz, so you can't cheat as we move through the process. But anyway, again, thanks for having me. Jomo heard this presentation. We gave it before the Chamber of Commerce, and just thought it would be of relevance, just a kind of a reminder and a refresher about what's happening in the state of Alaska. Oftentimes we hear sort of globally, why do we have more manufacturing in the state of Alaska? We need to bring manufacturing here to Alaska. And the truth of the matter is, we've had in-state manufacturing, value-added energy for many decades, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the process. But first let me see if I can get my controls here. I think everyone can see my screen, okay, right? Jomo, you got that okay? I'm taking that as an okay. Okay. Well, we thought we'd take the next 45 minutes and just really dive into this diagram about what is refining. I'm joking. I wouldn't do that to you at 8 o'clock. This is what I will say is refining, though, is a very complex process. We have a lot of wonderful, smart people that are working every day to take Alaska's crude and turn it into fuel products that we're using to move Alaska. But we will start with a little bit of a quiz. I took quiz out. Never mind. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary. Like I say, we've been manufacturing in Alaska for over 50 years. In fact, now 51 years. And we're really, really proud to do that. You'll see on the right side, some photos of our people. And we really couldn't do it without the families that work day in and day out to make that happen. Because we didn't have the quality people, that are doing it. We wouldn't be successful, and I know that goes across all the industries in the state of Alaska, not just ours. Just a little brief history, and then I'll get into more of the meat of the act. But you know, it started 50 years ago, 1969. You know, a small company called Tesoro out of San Antonio purchased a little land in Nikiski right after oil was discovered. And they built the first refinery in the state of Alaska. At the time, they employed 17 people and processed about 17,000 barrels a day. And then over that, 40-odd years, Tesoro grew into a pretty sizable refining company. We see them up and down the rail belt, in the form of our retail stations primarily. But the heart of us is our Kenai refinery. And then in 2017, we purchased another refining company called Western. And Western was kind of a mid-con refining company. And together, we merged and created a company called Endeavor in 2017. That gave us a number of refining companies, mostly west of the Mississippi. It was a good merger, and it was probably so good that a year later, Marathon Petroleum Corporation, another large refining company east of the Mississippi, we entered into a strategic merger with that company. So today, 50 years later, a couple of name changes, what we know as Tesoro is now Marathon Petroleum Corporation. Again, I'm just giving you a little bit of a background. And so who is Marathon Petroleum? As you can see here, we are now the nation's largest refining company. We refine more than 3 million barrels a day of refining capacity. That capacity is currently a little bit lower than that. Was a lot lower in the beginning part of the year, just primarily the impact of COVID is real. People stopped driving, stopped flying overnight. We all know about that. But that impact on supply and demand was significant. And today we have 14 refineries in 13 states. And I have a little asterisk next to that because we actually had 16 refineries at the beginning of the year. And again, I'll just emphasize that the impact of this year has been significant. And as a result, we've actually idled this refinery here in Gallup indefinitely. And we have also idled the Martinez refinery. However, we do have plans to turn that back around into more of a renewable refinery as we are with Dickinson. That seems to be evolving into sort of a new demand needs across the nation, and some of the regulatory pushes as well. From a retail perspective, we're the nation's second largest company-owned and operated convenience store chains. Again, those are probably the things more familiar to everybody in Alaska is the Tesoro brand up and down the rail belt. The Marathon brand is called Speedway. That it's its own sort of entity, and under Speedway they have the Speedway brand, Marathon, Arco, AM/PM, if anyone's been to California as of late, and then of course the Tesoro brand. I do have an asterisk next to that as well, and that's because in earlier part of this year we did announce a divestment of that part of the business. And so Speedway is currently under contract to be sold to 7-Eleven group of companies. And so we expect to see that transition happen probably sometime next year. Not sure exactly when that's happening. It seems like it's moving along, but again, lots of other things in the environment that are taking precedent. What does that mean for Alaska? Not totally sure. I think, at least in the Speedway portion, we were looking at things very critically. Do we keep the Tesoro brand? Do we move it to the Speedway brand? What do we do? So those conversations are still underway. And then, of course, the midstream side, right? So we gather, process, we transport natural gas, we store our fuel all across. So, we are a refining company, but we're very much a logistics company too. And I'll talk about that on the state side here as well. Sorry, let me So who are we in Alaska? I mean, we are absolutely Alaskans serving Alaska. Again, from 17 employees, today we're closer to 280 employees, the majority being in Nikiski, but a large part at the Port of Alaska. And now we've recently purchased the North Pole terminal from Flint Hills. And so now we have some 10 employees there at that terminal that receives much of our fuel up into that north side. But we're a refining company first and foremost, but as I noted, we're an integrated logistics and marketing company too. And I'll share a slide a little bit later that I think illustrates how complex this business is, not only creating energy and fuels for Alaska, but how we get it to market. And, and again, that's our first and foremost mission is that process, but safety and our commitment to the environment is paramount. And our professionals every day, we sort of joke like in the industry a little bit that we are the #1 environmentalists. And in many ways that's true, right? Because the standards that we take in our processes, in our delivery, and how we handle our business is above and beyond when it comes to environmental protection and safety protection, making sure people are able to get home every day and holding ourselves to a high standard. So this is, you all are probably pretty familiar with this, but I'm amazed in my short time in the refining sector, how often I get the question, okay, what do you do? Well, what we do is we take Alaska's crude and, we refine it and we turn it into transportation fuels and other fuels that people use every day. And you'll go, I had no idea. What do you mean? Doesn't it all go out of state, get refined and come back up to the state of Alaska? And the truth is, it couldn't be further from the truth. There are some crude, certainly, there's a lot of crude that heads out of state. There's no doubt to help feed West Coast refineries. But a large portion of both North Slope and all of the Cook Inlet crude stay here in the state of Alaska. So I'll just kind of walk you through the slide here. And so on the left-hand side, here's our feeds, right? So primarily a fair bit of North Slope crude. We take every drop of the Cook Inlet crude, and then we'll often import some either Bakken or other sources of foreign crude to mix the plate, just because both North Slope is a higher grade, higher sulfur content type of crude, and so we often have to cut that just because of our processes. And we take that crude and we throw it into the refining units, and we have our crude unit, and then multiple other units where we basically heat the fuel, heat the oil, separate it, and create these different fuel products at the end line. And so what do? Literally almost all of the molecule is used in our processes. And you can see at the end unit, what we create is gasoline, jet fuel, diesel, fuel oil, and asphalt. The story here really is that we're using in-state product to create this product for Alaskans. And up and down the rail belt, a large majority of the gasoline, no matter where you fill up, from cars to Costco to Fred Meyer, chances are, that gasoline was created here in the state of Alaska. Now, not all, there's a couple that are starting to import more foreign gasoline to come into the marketplace, but for the most part, that's where that goes. Jet fuel, we're one of the primary fuel providers for the Ted Stevens International Airport. So that's a big part of our business. Obviously, diesel to help trucks and cargo move, and again, asphalt for the roads. And so while most of that molecule is getting used in that process, there's almost little to no waste. And one of the wonderful little byproducts is sort of the sulfur recovery. So we have this unit here they call the diesel desulfurization, where we literally pull sulfur off the molecule. And that sulfur is, we're able to mine and stockpile, and we're able to utilize and sell that to third parties that end up using it for pharmaceuticals or whatever. And then the energy that's utilized to create some of these products, we're actually able to capture and reutilize in our manufacturing, because it is such a high energy intensive process. I'm going to pause right there just for a second and just take a sip. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them with that. Okay. I'll have the chat box up, Jomo, so if you...
Okay. And so, yes, again, Mr. Sullivan is monitoring the chat box, as am I, or you may take yourself off mute.
Yep, yep. Cool. Well, let's move into the logistics side. I think this is, for me, this was something that was really eye-opening, again, on the downstream side. You know, I'd worked up on the upstream, up on the North Slope for many years. Obviously, there's a lot of logistical challenges here, but the processes and how we create and deliver fuel to Alaskans, I think is really amazing, because it's happening all the time, and we just take it all for advantage. That there's just going to be gas at the pump, there's just going to be energy, you know, heating fuel available. We're able to get in that plane. It's just not a problem with the jet fuel. And so I'll just walk you through a little bit of our business line. So here in the bottom middle is our Kenai Refinery. That Kenai Refinery, you can see, is fed here primarily by product coming in, mostly by marine. So anything that comes in from taps is shipped around and delivered here. Cook Inlet is primarily delivered via pipe at this point, via Hillcorp. And then Blue Crest Energy, if you're familiar with them, they're producing a number of oil out of the Cook Inlet, and that's coming in trucked. So we take all that product in, refine it like I just shared. We've got product going out. We've got a terminal here in Nikiski with a truck rack and an asphalt rack. So there's a lot of people coming and going all the time, taking that gasoline and jet and asphalt out into the Peninsula marketplace. And then from the Kenai Refinery, there is we are able to deliver our fuel to the Port of Anchorage and to the Ted Stevens International Airport, primarily by pipe. So there is a 10-inch, 70-mile pipeline that allows us to deliver our product directly to the Port of Alaska. It's a batched product, so we can send gas, and we can send diesel, and then we can send jet. And so that helps us provide our supply here to the Port of Alaska. Just a quick note at the port, we have two terminals there. Excuse me. We have our long-standing Tesoro terminal, and then we also purchased the Flint Hills terminal there when they departed Alaska. At that terminal, again, same thing. We have a rail rack, we have a truck rack. So there are trucks coming and going. You can see on the bottom right-hand side, those are some of our fleet. We have a fleet of 4 trucks that come and go and deliver product. And then we have others, Crowley and Weaver Brothers. Everybody's coming and going, getting gasoline to take it out to the South Central area. And then we also receive product here as well. Again, marine, primarily jet. You know, we don't have the capacity to supply Ted Stevens International with enough jet. We're just not big enough. So we do have to supplement some jet supply at that point, and us and others to help supply that. And then fuel gets on the railroad there at the port, and it is delivered here to the North Pole terminal. So we have, again, rail cars going up every day, multi-products, again, gas, jet, diesel primarily, and then those products are taken from third party out into the interior. So really from a top to bottom, we've got a very integrated supply chain and ability to deliver from an integrated logistics piece. And so it's very efficient in what it does, but it takes a lot of moving parts and a lot of great professionals that are working every day to make sure things are moving okay. I'll just a little note down here on the bottom left. I'd be remiss to not talk quickly about our Kenai LNG terminal. You know, that's the ConocoPhillips's LNG. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. That was an export terminal for 40 years. We purchased that 2 or 3 years ago, and it is in warm status at the moment. But we do have a permit request in with the FERC to turn that back into a import terminal for the moment. And I'll just expand briefly that that energy is really the number one driver, operations driver, cost of operations at the refinery. And I will say our partners at Hillcorp and others are doing a yeoman's job in the marketplace at Cook Inlet to provide gas, keep on that, but we still I was talking to Gilmo earlier, last winter was a pretty hard winter in South Central, and we actually experienced some commercial curtailments for our operations. And we just can't have that. It's, the refinery is not built to be turned on and off on a switch. We really need to have a consistent supply throughout the year. And so one of the ideas here is to utilize this to help provide us a supplemental source to that refinery at a competitive price to ensure that we don't have that situation.
If I may, Casey, what is the status of that application? Like, how long has it been in, and about how long does that process take with the FERC?
Yeah, no, it's been going on, now for, gosh, it's been a little bit, I'm gonna say just over about a year and a half, I think overall, just kind of the back and forth, right? They came and visited this last summer, maybe springtime, and they're very impressed with the facility. I'll say Conoco did a great job of keeping that facility in good shape. We've taken it, even better. So really, they're pretty impressed with what's going on. It's just anytime you're dealing with the federal government, there's all sorts of layers of questions that you continue to have to work through and technical side. And so we're happy to work with them. They've been great to work with, but it's just a timing and a process. I don't, and again, in the new world, where capital is finite, we're sort of thinking about how do we best stage to get this up and running. It's, I'd say it's still a couple of years out.
Okay.
I'm trying to think.
We do have a question here from Mr. Soli. What percentage does Cook Inlet crude make up of the fuels Marathon distributes in Alaska? Trying to get a sense of stock makeup.
As far as probably about, I'd say the amount of Cook Inlet crude that we utilize to bring in is about 25% overall.
So just to, if I could continue on, Mr. Chairman, Casey, so the other 75% kind of just trying to understand where that's coming from. I know you kind of listed it, but just not too fine a point, but just to get a sense, North Slope, what you're bringing in and other.
No, I'm just going to say that right now, I mean, it all shifts a little bit, right? And we're doing some batch runs at the moment, but North Slope is a large portion of our crude that we're utilizing. So we would love to see more oil coming out of the Cook, but right now I'd say it's about 15% foreign, 25 to 30-ish, Cook, and then the rest is North Slope. Again, moving target a little bit depending in how they all make those runs.
Thank you.
Yep.
We do have a question again regarding LNG. What's the timeline for, well, I guess this would be the back end of that FERC application. What would be the time frame, as best you know, for when LNG would be being imported into that facility?
Well, from a timing standpoint, once we were able to get our permits, the construction really is not that much. It's not significant. So really, what we're having to do is create a system of piping and some compressors to capture some boil-off gas and be able to pipe it on over to the refinery. So that process isn't hard. This is, I mean, from a long lead construction standpoint. And then it's just going out and finding the sourced gas at that time to be able to bring it on in. So I think once we get the permit, the turnaround time is nominal. It's not a very definitive answer. I apologize, but
it's okay.
Yep.
Was there a follow-up?
Yeah. Hey, Casey, this is Mary Ann. How are you doing? Yeah. Hey, in terms of that plant, it's always been an extremely critical backup supply for Cook Inlet and the South Central utilities, as well as potentially others in Fairbanks and the interior. I was wondering, getting the permit with the relaxed regulations and the urgency and the need on this plant. Is it FERC that's the holdup, or is it just, kind of other issues that become more imperative as we look at this optionality for Alaska on a go-forward basis with Marathon?
So I think two things there. One has been it has been, anyone that's dealt with FERC or PHMSA understands that that is not they do not operate on a very rapid basis, right? And with good understanding, right? I mean, these are complex mechanical sort of systems that we're dealing with for some part, and so we've been going through that process, as you know, with them. And FERC had it for a little while, then they kicked it to PHMSA. So with PHMSA, we sort of did our due diligence with PHMSA, and now we're back in kind of with FERC. And so I think we're in a good position with them. The latter part is, what, and you sort of allude to internally, it's a good question. We are a big company. There's a lot of different stakeholders within the company. There's a lot of different competition for capital within the company, especially given today's new environment where the demand destruction on the bottom line is real. And so, I guess I would say is this remains a priority for us when we show them the economics and what this really means for refining. The importance is not lessened by any means, but it's just a matter of, do we have the right means and capital today to really execute it, as quickly as we'd like. I think it's the punchline is we're working the best we can to sort of stage it all out.
Thank you so much, Casey.
Yep. I'm trying to think what I shifted to here. Just really quick. I don't know if I know some of you certainly have been down to Avtech down in Seward. This is a photo, just really quick. I just want to shift gears a little bit, just from the logistics side. This is a marine simulator down at Avtech, and they have 5 of these different simulators down there. It's an absolutely wonderful facility. It's one that we've invested in, close to $500,000 over the last couple of years to help them upgrade their both hardware and software. And we do that because, as I showed you earlier, from a logistics side, marine is critical to what we do and to be able to deliver fuel in and out and do it efficiently. And so we utilize these, we partner with Avtech to help train our marine pilots that we contract with up and down all around the state of Alaska. And they come in here and simulate working in the very difficult ice environments of Cook Inlet. Big tidal shifts, huge ice seasons. And so they work on both navigating and emergency operations in a very safe and controlled environment. So couldn't be more proud of that partnership. Super cool. Those guys are great down there. And I'll tell you, you walk into one of these simulators. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a flight simulator. I'll tell you, the marine simulator is no joke. You walk in there and it's like, you go from calm to 20-foot seas. And it's, at least for me, it was insta seasick. So, but pretty cool. Something we're really proud of down there. That's a picture of that. So just shifting again real quick, I want to talk about Alaska's and the West Coast value chain and how Alaska is both critical and important to the lower 48 and how the lower 48 West Coast is also important to us. And there's a lot of moving parts that help support each other all the time. And, one of the things that we talked about is that the molecule, we use almost all of the molecule here in the state of Alaska as much as we can, but we can't use it all. And at the end, there is some heavy fuel oil that we just can't process. We're just not, we're not complex enough to be able to do that. So we shift that out and we send it to our refineries, mostly down at LA, and they're able to utilize that to create, to break it down, hydrocrack it to different fuel products down there. In inverse, they support us in many ways in the jet process, right? So we can't create enough jet, but they can help create enough jet to support what we do. And then we bring some in from the Far East as well. And then again, everyone has a turnaround every year, right? Petrostar has a turnaround, we have a turnaround. It's really important to our regulatory compliance, to making sure that we operate in a safe and reliable manner. But when we do that, we got to get our product from somewhere to support Alaska. And so again, we have this synergy between our different refineries back and forth. When they're off, we support them. When they're off, they support us. And so that's one of the benefits of being that sort of larger company, all eyes always kind of working together to ensure that each other can be successful in different places.
Kind of a high level refining question.
Sure.
I guess when I first started doing this job, I just kind of thought of refineries as kind of out of the box. But it turns out that there's actually quite a bit of fine tuning to the mechanics depending on the crude that it is receiving and is meant to process. Is that true?
That is true. So not all refineries are created equal. And so when you look at Alaska refineries, we're fairly simple refineries, fairly small and fairly simple. So the products that we can produce are generally, we're a more complex refinery than the Petrostar refineries, but at the same time, down in lower 48, you see very, very large scale refineries that are much, much more complex and have a much deeper product line, as it were, and can process different types of feedstock coming in. So no, they're not all created equal, and generally speaking, Alaskas are sort of the less complex of the groups.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Just a quick little overview on the North Pole. I mean, I just really wanted to highlight that again when Flint Hills, as you know, left a couple of years ago. One of the things that they while the refinery itself, of course, has been moved, they did leave the terminal. We were the lessee for that terminal for many, many years, and so we just last summer, not this last summer, summer before, ended up purchasing that from Flint Hills. We're glad to have done that. It just really kind of completes our vertical integration from a logistics standpoint. But as I talked to you about earlier, we receive our product via rail cars. You can see we have 10 rail offloads, gas, jet, ULSD. And then we have a 6-lane truck rack that can deliver all those products and help keep that interior supply moving all around. I don't know if anyone knows Derek, but he's our terminal manager. So if you ever have any problems, call Derek. And again, we have our 10 local employees there. So really glad to do that. They're a good group up there. And again, glad to have that as part of our portfolio. So I'll finalize just kind of our thoughts here. I mean, again, really appreciate everyone taking time with me. It's early, I know, and I kind of jammed through this, so I'm happy to answer more questions. But, the punchline is we're, even though it's the Marathon National Banner, what's here is truly Alaskans creating quality products for Alaska. We've been doing it for 50 years. We're super proud about it. It's a big, it matters in what we do. And I'll just say that the family down there in Kenai specifically is literally that. We have folks there that are multi-generation employees, and they are, their grandfather worked there, the dad worked there, now my daughter works there. I have father and daughters working there now. I've got 4 or 5 different family chains that sort of work there. And I think that's awesome. I mean, it's a great success story for Alaska because it shows that, within Alaska, there is a great opportunity to build a career and to provide for your family in a way that's meaningful, because what you're doing matters to the state of Alaska. So I just can't say enough about the quality of individuals and how proud we are for what we do. But we've been doing it for 50 years, but it's not without its challenges. So what do we need to be successful for the next 50? And first and foremost is competitive and abundant sources of crude. And I talked about that. We need North Slope and Cook Inlet to continue to be bountiful and competitive. And I'm glad to have seen where ballot measure 1 ended up personally. We definitely were supporting no on that. But they have their own challenges. Same with Cook Inlet. So however we can continue them to be successful helps us and helps Alaska get their energy. Number 2 is our reliable and affordable energy. Again, our partners there at Hillcorp, they're doing a good job. Whatever we can do to increase sources of energy supply, competition, long-term, short and long-term will be helpful. workforce is something we all talk about all the time. There's no two ways about it, right? I mean, again, we have a little bit of a shortage there. There was a bit of a brain drain. We're starting to see that. Seems like that's stabilizing a little bit. But again, providing that vision for Alaskan kids that they can work here in Alaska is critical. And whether in any industry, really, but certainly we want that as well. And then just lastly, public policy that encourages businesses to thrive, right? I mean, what I'll say about, and I have got some lawmakers on here, so that's great. We know you have your own challenges down in Juneau this next year, and I say just from a regulatory or an industry perspective, the message of sort of do no harm is really helpful. Is really, I can't emphasize enough at this point, just because we're still in recovery mode significantly as we continue to navigate this COVID world and the price of oil. But from a regulatory perspective, one of the things I'll give kudos to the Dunleavy administration about is they have been very focused on, what is it? What are your barriers? How can we fix things? How can we update regulations to reflect the most useful processes today? And we've been able to get a number of just small changes that from pressure safety valves to above ground storage tanks, that where the regulations that we have on the books, they're 4 steps behind, right? Just because they just haven't been addressed. It takes time to do these regulatory changes. And when you present opportunities to say, hey, look, this is where API is, and you guys are 4 steps behind. And so there's conflict between the regulator and what is the best practice today in some of these pieces, both for safety, environmental, operational. So I appreciate that they have had a focus on that, and I would encourage others to keep that same focus. It doesn't always have to be about what law you're going to pass. It can be like, hey, what else can we change to ensure that you guys are operating, help you be successful? So we just encourage that lens. But so with that, I will stop there, and I just appreciate everyone's time and attention this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Well, we do have a couple in the chat box. I'll go ahead and start working through those. But again, if anybody would like to pull themselves off of mute, please do feel free. Okay, so let's start with, okay. So does Marathon provide the ultra-low sulfur diesel used in Fairbanks?
We are a large producer and supplier of ULSD in Fairbanks, yes.
Okay. And as far as gas sourcing, while we were still discussing the Kenai facility, and this question did pop up at the very end, what are the options for the source of gas? I'm assuming they mean, again, beyond Cook Inlet. Although,
Well,
Mr. Newman, you can pull yourself off mute, sir.
who's that? Me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Sullivan.
Oh, no, I was just listening to your question. So I just, the Cook Inlet Basin is not done, but it's not an easy basin either. And again, I think you're seeing where Hillcorp is doing a great job in many ways, but it takes capital investment. It takes customers. I mean, there's a lot there. We're seeing where Hex took over the Fury assets. We wish John Hendricks super success in his endeavors there. Blue Crest sitting on, sizable gas reserves. They're waiting for the right time. They're getting after oil before they're getting after gas, which makes sense in today's price environment. But that basin isn't done. But again, it is a challenge. It is hard, and it takes it takes the right economics to go after that gas. If the question was with regard to LNG, there's a number of LNG export terminals that are sort of in the works, and there's both foreign and domestic opportunities there, and so we're looking at all those.
Then we had another question. What issues do you anticipate from the presidential transition, positive or negative, or both, or any?
Yeah, I think you're going to see. We're going to wait and see. I do think that there's a little bit of trepidation on some of the things, again, some of the regulatory pieces, we may see some rollback on larger pushes to renewables. Some big pushes again away from fossil fuel, more towards renewable. And I guess what we're not afraid of, but is regulating the demand side economics, as it were. So, pushing the regulatory side to push the demand away from fossil fuel products into other type of products.
So I have a question, and I guess it shouldn't have come as an epiphany to me, but it is interesting to hear an energy company that is, again, as vertically integrated as you all are, also always on the lookout and hungry for affordable energy, because of course, again, you need it in your refining process. Do you have any pointers as far as, again, that nexus between public policy and, how we ensure, all of us get to have affordable energy to do the things that we need and want to do?
Well, again, I'll just reiterate that from a refining process, and others on the line, right, from Petrostar can chime in, right? We are an energy-intensive business. That is just the punchline, right? We to do the work that we do takes a lot of energy, incoming energy, as it were. And so, the more opportunities we have to create a competitive marketplace to lower that price, frankly, will be helpful, and to have a steady stream of supply as well. Again, the curtailment last year, I think, was unforeseen. We haven't had a couple of cold winters like that in the South Central in a long time. And I think we just got caught a little flat. Not we, others, maybe flat-footed. I don't know, but we, from the refining standpoint, we need to make sure that we've got a steady stream of supply, a competitive price. I mean, I'll just say currently the cost of gas in the cook is about 3 times greater than what we pay in the lower 48. And it's about, it's greater than 30% of our operating costs. It's a big darn line item. So, we are laser focused on that.
That's mining scale.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So we do have another question in the chat box. If the LNG terminal was back in operation, do you know what percentage of the refinery's daily energy needs could be supplied through just the boil off from, say, those full tanks?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a good supplemental supply. I don't have that number just right off the top of my head. I'm happy to follow up with somebody, but it's not the entire supply by any means. I'd say it's a third, somewhere nominally, a third to a quarter of the supply, but it's really a supplemental supply in ensuring. But it makes a difference.
Okay, Rep Prox, I see that you pulled yourself off mute. You have a question, sir?
Hey.
I did. We're hearing about PFAS up here in Fairbanks North Pole from just about everywhere. Does Marathon have PFAS contamination problems?
So I don't know how to best answer that. I guess, are you talking about our North Pole terminal? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm looking at your operation. Apparently in Kenai is right next to a lake. And if you've been fighting fires or practicing fighting fires, I would guess you're having some challenges with that.
I'd say right now our biggest challenge when it comes to PFAS, certainly, there's a hyper focus on that and understanding how we're going to continue to utilize that. In the area there at the Kenai, we have actually almost fully removed any AAA firefighting foam from our area, and we're looking at other alternatives to the AAAF. It's very specific, the type of material used to fight a chemical fire, right? And so AAAF is one of those that is very good, and right now there's no other real good commercial viable alternative to that. So that's a challenge. In the Anchorage area, we actually have the same thing, firefighting systems that use AAAF. And today we are mandated by the state fire marshal to test those systems with AAAF, AFFF, excuse me,
right,
annually. And so But we're actually working with them right now on a deferral to that because the ability, once you've tested that, the ability to pick it up and clean it up and remove it is really cost prohibitive at this point.
Right.
And so we're working with them on alternatives. And then in the North Pole area, right? Certainly again, we've picked up that terminal from Flint Hills, from Williams. I mean, you guys all know that story up there. But we have almost fully removed sort of PFAS. We're continuing to work to remove all of that from some of our wastewater issues. So again, that's a very complex answer. And there's some issues up there in the North Pole that actually you're on my list to call to talk about. So.
Oh, good.
But punchline is no. We the moment we're good with where we are there.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Well, I don't have any questions in the chat box. So please, again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pull yourself off of mute. Wonk that I am, I find this all fascinating. So
well, again, I'll just close maybe with a little bit. I like to say we're, and to all of us, I mean, my friends at PetroStar as well, we're sort of Alaska's best kept secret in many ways. And I do laugh at times, not laugh, but I just, because I've learned more about it. It's revealed itself to me, but it's the conversation about in-state manufacturing. And again, something that we've been doing here for 50 years, Alaskans doing it every day. And it's meaningful. We are creating fuels that are helping ambulances move, cargo move, jet fuel to get people in and out of the state of Alaska, be able to, heat our homes and drive our cars. And so, again, I appreciate everyone's attention to this because I know this committee, I can just tell by the names, you guys have been working on these critical issues for a lot longer than I have. And we're not done yet. We're always going to be working them, but I just would say as we have this conversation and putting on the lens of continuing to look at how do we create Alaska as a place to do business, right? And what can we do to help create that environment that helps businesses thrive and survive? And part of it's energy, that's a big part, but there's a lot more to it down the road too. And so anyway, I appreciate this committee's attention and what FEDC does all the time to have that mission.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Sullivan. All right, everybody. Well, it looks like, we'll actually end a little early today. All right. So again, Mr. Sullivan, again, thank you so much. Again, Marathon Petroleum. Again, it's very interesting stuff. I find it fascinating. Okay, so just so everybody knows, next week we will be having a meeting. I guess I kind of forgot that Thanksgiving is next Thursday, but everybody's online, so it shouldn't be a big hassle. So we are going to have a meeting next week, 8 to 9 a.m. And actually our guest is scheduled to be Deb Hickok and Scott McCrae from Explore Fairbanks to give us our tourism update. If you recall, we did have a briefing on the potential tourist season a little earlier in the year. And so now we're going to, again, let's see how it all turned out from their perspective and any plans they may have for as we move into the coming year. But that's it. I guess last thing, we'll end where we started, which is, again, if you hear of anyone who could use some COVID-related assistance, please do send them over to the borough. They are still taking applications, I believe, until November 30th or funds expended. We did hear that they are moving towards full subscription, but they're not quite there yet. They've raised the limits as far as the dollar figure. If someone had gone in earlier and gotten what at the time was the maximum, they can go back and reapply for a little extra bump under the new maximum. Again, but it's about the last show in town now to help businesses across our community. If you hear of any that need it, please do send them to the borough ASAP. And beyond that, I hope everybody has a great Tuesday, great remainder of the week, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Again, thanks a million, Casey.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.